Hey guys, welcome to the Portland Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm here with my co-host Jordan Lee, and I'm Stephen Tran. Jordan, who did we have the pleasure of interviewing this week?
Yeah, we had a fantastic episode this week. We interviewed Kim Parmon, who I've had the pleasure of working with on a couple of deals, and she's a fantastic agent, and she's got a great story too. You know, she started as an actor in LA. You can look her up on IMDb.
We did that.
We did that, and she got a payout from a commercial, and she converted that into a real estate investment, and it wasn't like her plan to get into real estate, but I think after she did that, she kind of learned how much equity you could gain by doing renovations, and then she eventually converted that into a career up here in Portland, and she's worked on a lot of flips now, as well as negotiating short sales. So
yeah, and what I found really interesting about this episode was that she does really cater to the Portland market. She doesn't do standard flips. She really does put her stylistic view into these homes that she works on.
She's not buying hundreds of gallons of contractor grays. She's
she's doing a really good job. She's adding a lot of vintage touches that I think is really great and really interesting for this market. It really does sell.
Yeah, know your audience, right?
Yeah. So really excited for this episode. Let's get into it.
Yeah, enjoy the show. Hey everyone, and thanks for tuning in to the Portland Real Estate Investing Podcast. We're here with our guest Kim Parmon and Stephen Tran and myself, Jordan Lee.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so hey, just to get started, Kim, could you go ahead and just give us your short story, how'd you get to Portland, how you ended up here, what brought you here? I know you have a pretty different path to real estate than a lot of us, so we'd love to, for our listeners, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, well, I'll try to keep it short. I started in real estate. I guess I should start this way. I was living in Los Angeles, trying to work in the entertainment industry, and I did on occasion.
Hey, you're on IMDb. I saw you on there when we were looking on there before the show.
Well, I should say I was bartending in Los Angeles because that's what you do as an aspiring actor. And I was always really wanting to buy a house. I moved around a lot as a kid, and it's something that really appealed to me. And it was impossible in Los Angeles, and then the market crashed. So in 2011, I happened to actually book a job that paid a lot of money, and took that money and immediately used it as a down payment for an FHA loan for a short sale property in kind of a sketchy neighborhood, but it was on a pretty street, and it was the one thing that we could afford to buy. And that's what I wanted to do. We went on a trip to Greece, and we bought a house with the money.
Was it like a consistent acting job? You were on
No, it was a commercial. It was
And they just paid you a lump sum for doing the commercial?
You actually get residual checks.
Oh, okay.
But it played all the time for a short period of time, and so I think I made $30,000 doing that commercial. And took that money and rolled it into an FHA loan, and we were not qualified for very much, especially not in LA.
Right.
But we happened to stumble into an open house in a neighborhood that we weren't really considering in Pasadena, and really liked it. The layout was good. It was a pretty street. It needed some work, but it was all workable, and we didn't have any know-how at the time. So I keep saying my husband and I. So we ended up actually going under contract on this house, and we had a great agent, and he pulled us through to the finish line at that point in time, even though there was stuff to do that we paid for things prior to closing in order to make it through. We were there scraping paint off of the walls to make sure it could appraise.
Pass the appraisal.
Yeah, did a roof on the garage, and did things that I wouldn't necessarily advise my clients to do as a real estate agent.
Oh, wait, you guys did the roof on the garage while you were in contract?
Yeah, while we were in contract.
Amazing.
But we needed to make it to close, and we happened to get there. And so we lived in that house for 2.5 years and had a kid, and decided at that time my husband had gotten a job across town in LA. That's a big deal, especially if you're working all the time and you can only come home sometimes. He was in the restaurant industry too. So we ended up selling and just made a lot of money at that point off of selling the house. I was somebody who was used to having very little savings.
Yeah, working as a bartender.
Yeah, working as a bartender, having $2,000 most of the time in my bank account. And we were able to pay off my husband's student loans and his car and put 20% down on our next house. And the things we had done to that property were paint, change out lighting fixtures. I think we did a bathroom remodel. And that was it, like landscaped it. So we invested a lot of labor. It became something that we really, really loved to work on as we were living there. That's kind of what we did for fun in our spare time, and just kind of fell in love with the process. And it was something that we took a lot of pride in, but we weren't actually trying to invest in real estate.
You were just like, I want this place to be a little nicer to live in.
Yeah, we just wanted a nice place to live. So we were working on improving it and decided to sell it, and the market had improved to such a degree, and we had a desirable house at that point in time that we made a lot of money, and we moved somewhere else, and then did it again sort of accidentally right away, because Matt, my husband, was managing a new bar and restaurant. He was gone like all the time, and I had a 9-month-old baby at the time, and I spent my free time when she was napping, like stripping hardware, like vintage hardware that had been painted over, or buying light fixtures, or, doing things to make the house nice, because I liked it. It was a kind of a grandma's house. We pulled up all the carpet, and we ended up doing a kitchen remodel because,
oh, wow.
Well, funny story. We moved into the house. We had purchased a refrigerator to go into the house, and we hadn't measured properly before it got delivered. So I showed up with the baby at the house, and there was my husband demoing the kitchen. And I was like, what are you doing? We were not planning on remodeling this immediately, and had never done a kitchen, so it was kind of overwhelming. But
I have a question. Like, why didn't you just buy a new fridge?
I have no idea. Good question. He apparently didn't think about it. So we were planning on remodeling at some point, but it accelerated our timeline. So we would put the baby down for a nap or to sleep, and we got cabinets from IKEA and did an IKEA kitchen remodel. And
nice.
As we were living in that house, things sort of changed with my husband's job, and we started thinking about potentially opening our own bar and restaurant, which in Los Angeles, you need millions of dollars to be able to do that.
Yeah, so, what's just the permit cost there?
So even just the liquor license,
the license,
I think is a couple $100,000.
It's crazy.
Because they don't issue a lot of them.
Yeah.
There's only a couple that get issued, so you usually have to buy from somebody who already has one. So the scarcity aspect of it
right.
makes it
Yeah,
expensive.
it's like getting a taxi emblem in New York, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of started doing research on various places that we had traveled to that we liked, or where we had some friends and family, and we looked at how easy it was to get a liquor license, and how small business friendly places were, and how interesting we found the environment. And we're both Virgos, and we had our lists and our charts, and like, how many people do we know in these locations, and ended up actually settling on Portland because we had been here, we had some close friends here, and we really liked it, and everything seemed to line up for us. So we ended up selling that house that we had just bought, and made a little bit off of it, even though we weren't intending to, after only being there for 6 months.
In 6 months, you were able to turn it. Wow.
Yeah, with a kitchen remodel and painting and light fixtures.
That's true.
And
I guess you did a decent amount of work.
Yeah, on all the things we did. So we ended up having a little profit even after selling costs, which was great. And then moved up here with the intention of opening a bar, which we did briefly. And, that's a very difficult business. Mm-hmm. So it ended up not being something that worked out for us in the end. We had a lot of learning lessons from it, but I think we were a little too, big for our britches at that point, coming from LA. Like, we didn't understand the Portland market at all. It was really dumb.
What were the major challenges in having a bar here?
Food service is always just really challenging. It's not a very profitable business. It takes a lot of hours and time. And I think that we reached a place where it was
really hard margins if you're not doing all the labor yourself.
Jordan knows.
Yeah, it's just really hard.
Yeah. So it was one of those things where I think it had always been a dream of my husband's to have his own place. And he got to the place where we actually had it. And he was like, I'd rather be home with my family. I don't want to be here until midnight every night. So we had a lot of reassessing of what our priorities were. And I decided to get a real estate license right around that time because I'd always been interested in it, and obviously had...
We'd done well with this.
Yeah.
I mean, this looked cool on paper.
Yeah.
Or actually, it doesn't really look on paper.
Right. No, I mean, I kind of obviously had an aptitude for it. And so... I got a real estate license, and I kind of jumped into real estate right away and started working in the investment world and doing foreclosure auctions and helping people.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. So you started. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So help our audience, because foreclosure auctions, that hasn't really been a thing for quite a while.
It's starting up now again.
Yes.
But
Kind of. A little bit. But yeah.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because most of us now, even like I started in the business 6 years ago, and honestly, it's like that's not even on my radar.
Yeah. So it's both interesting and sad. There's a lot to it. I happened to join, when I first got licensed, a very small brokerage that it was a subsidiary of a Seattle brokerage, where the owners of the brokerage in Seattle did a lot of foreclosure auctions and it was an investment-minded brokerage. So this was a small kind of satellite office, and they needed somebody to essentially run their auction department. And so I was really interested, and I just kept asking a lot of questions about it and wanting to study, and like anytime they were in town, just taking up a lot of their time. And they were like, well, I mean, you seem to be interested, so do you want to do this? So I just learned essentially how to comp houses and, come up with ARV and study things. But foreclosure in general is, the challenge there is that, first of all, I pretty much always tell any new investor, this is not what you want to do. This is a very advanced thing to do, but you can get a really good deal buying at foreclosure auction. The issue is most of the time you're not able to see the property prior to buying it. You could drive by it, every once in a while somebody, like, it might be open and people can walk through. It is breaking and entering if you do that, but that is something.
Yeah, heck with getting an inspection, you might not even be able to just walk through it.
Right. I mean, it may be occupied by somebody who's losing their house, and that's terrible, and you have to deal with getting them out of the property, and the condition of the home could be anything. So it's really a matter of really knowing your numbers and doing the math on what ARV is, what potential repair costs could come up, knowing, hey, the age of this house, it's on a hillside, there's a high chance there's a foundation problem. Like, if you're factoring in $150,000, does your bid still make sense? So it's all just the math of the situation.
And did your company have more proprietary data that was outside of the RMLS, or did you just learn how to do everything through the MLS system?
I learned through the MLS, and also I've always liked researching stuff. I mean, there's part of what drew me.
There's a ton of data in there, which I feel like most people don't really use.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Portland Maps is also super helpful in finding info, but I would just Google the owners of the property and see if I could find out anything about them.
You look into the tax ID of that property and then dig into the owners?
Yeah. So you could find info on who the owner is on tax records, or even on Portland Maps, it'll say.
And I was just wondering, how does knowing about the owners help you figure out what kind of damage might be in the house? Yeah, well, I mean, it was more we can't tell if it's occupied or not. Okay. So is it occupied? Are they still living there? I was able to, at one point in time, find, I Googled the address of a property and found the tenant who lived there posting about their illegal speakeasy in the basement and the rat problem that they had. And so it was able to give me some information. So I kind of took the acting skills that I had in character research and development and applied it to that, and was able to pull information for people. And then it's just risk analysis for folks. And so we had an investor list, people who we would help buy at auction. And I learned a lot doing that. So that's what got me into real estate in general. And so
your clients then weren't really retail consumers, like a traditional retail agent, residential agent. You were more working with other realtors and investors. So kind of in your beginning, you got to build a nice network of kind of the industry folks that are bigger investors.
Yeah, it was a good entree into the profession in a lot of ways. And I was also able to really build a consistent business for myself as a brand new agent, because I had a couple of really great investor clients, and I just did a lot of stuff with them at first. So being somebody that's not from here, and I didn't have a large network of people here, and I'm not, despite the acting thing, I'm probably more introverted. I'm not necessarily somebody who's going to go hand business cards out to people.
I'm not going to go door knock and
cold
call all day.
It was nice to get my experience that way, and then be able to host open houses and meet other people there and build things from there. But it really helped me learn a lot about houses in general. It was very interesting. It was a great beginning.
With your experience in foreclosure auctions, did you ever participate yourself?
I did. Many times.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, which is the other huge advantage is because it taught you very quickly how to spot what was a deal and what wasn't.
Yep. Yeah, there were definitely times where there would be a property that like was vacant and great and nobody was bidding on it. And we would be there with money, you know, at the auction. And it's like, well, all right, I'll bid on it. You know, I mean, the trick was I didn't have any money to spend on these properties. So how was I going to get into this business without having funds myself? So I ended up doing a joint venture with a friend of ours who had actually invested in our bar. And when we lost money on the bar, we made sure he stayed whole. Mm-hmm. So he trusted us. And that was really, like, he was the money, we were the labor, my husband and I. You know, I found the deals, my husband did a lot of the work. And yeah, it ended up working out. So we were able to actually do multiple flips over the course of a couple of years and some rentals as well, using other people's funds. And
okay, so you flipped some and then you kind of kept some and kind of did like that Burr type method.
Exactly. So we would do a cash out, well, not a cash out refinance. We would just refinance and be able to actually potentially pull the principal out. And on occasion we would do that. But for the most part, we made sure that our partners were able to get paid for their funds. And then we would keep our loan as low as possible in order to maximize cash flow.
So with these partners, you usually just paid them out fully, and so they weren't partners afterwards.
Yeah, so we would just let things roll. I think we let it roll for like 2 years. Okay. And then they decided that Portland's returns weren't as great as other places, which was true for flipping. And also, I'm never going to do crappy work or cut corners. I sell to buyers. I have a reputation in town. I'm not going to do like the lipstick flip.
Yeah.
So we weren't having home runs every time because I was hiding things from people or doing a bad job. We were making like $30,000 and they thought that wasn't worth the risk, even though we had it dialed and were doing things quickly and turning things around really quickly. It also, my retail business started taking off and I just didn't have the time to devote to it anymore.
Yeah. So you basically switched from DIY to like hiring more contractors.
Yeah, we wanted things to be done right for any of those projects. Like there would be things like, you know, we could obviously install an IKEA kitchen. but as far as like the bigger things, roofs, things like that was not us. We were hiring people for all those things.
How many projects were you having run per year, basically?
I think we're doing maybe 4. So it wasn't a huge thing. Like it was kind of a side project, more with the idea of starting to build wealth for ourselves than to create a whole business out of it. That wasn't the goal, is to be one of those people who had like 30 projects going at once. It's too overwhelming.
And there was more opportunity at that time, right? There was just more deals around and
there was more opportunity, but also I had clients that I would give first opportunity for deals too. So it's not like I had thousands of deals to choose from. I would make sure my clients were all taken care of. And then if there was somebody not buying something, that would be the thing I'd go for. Yeah.
And so now that you mentioned you kind of transition into more normal retail clients, how much of your clients are kind of on this investment mindset now versus just like first-time home buyers or move-up buyers?
Yeah, I still definitely have some investors. I think that I'm kind of an investment geek, so I just attract those folks. But I have primarily traditional buyers and sellers right now. Yeah, I think that investors also have taken a pause over the last couple of years, by and large. Like some of them are still out there, but most of them have taken a pause and are starting to come back out again.
Yeah, I feel like at this market, you got to be ready to do quite a bit of work to be able to make it happen. I don't know what you think, Steven.
Well, I mean, for me, like I like to work with a lot of investors, like more first-time investors, people who really, don't feel like they can afford a home. But
totally.
How can they get roommates, or how can they, rent out an ADU or do short-term rentals? So I feel like my investor pool is kind of moving up a little bit, but not like obviously the big-time investors. Yeah,
I think that there have still been buy and hold investors over the last couple of years. I feel like there are always buy and hold investors who are looking for deals, but flippers. Yeah. Like I primarily had flippers and they paused.
They're on a pause.
Yeah, in the Portland market. So I just got a call from one of them the other day saying, hey, seems like maybe there's some opportunities. I was like, you are right, my friend. Now is the time. Let's get out there.
Totally. And if you had to if you had a first time investor or somebody that was kind of on the fence that was like, hey, I kind of want to get into this, I've seen what you've done and what other folks have done. What's an easy way for me to get started?
Well, I think building your team is huge. Making sure that you have professionals around you that you can trust, that know what they're talking about. That's not just like your friend who got their real estate license 3 months ago, who's willing to write whatever offers for you. Really find an agent who's going to tell you the truth and what they think about a deal, and listen to them if they're experienced. Find a lender that's going to be able to work through issues with you. Make sure you have a really great relationship with your contractor. People forget it's a relationship business. So understanding that if you treat people badly, you are not going to be prioritized is huge. I think that there are a lot of investors who don't understand contractors or make sure people get paid on time, or think, treat them poorly, and your contractor is going to have such a huge impact on what happens with your house and your project, and if you're going to make your budget, or if you're going to close on time, especially if you're holding something with hard money. If you get delayed for 3 months, you could be sunk.
Yeah. You
could miss the market, you really have to take care of your team.
And for some of your clients that are looking for, things that they can remodel a little bit, what is some of the advice or projects where you're like, you don't want to think about doing, that's a little bit heavy, or oh yeah, this kind of little project that might work, that might be something that you could, that's not crazy.
I think if we're talking about flippers, then my advice is always to think about who your buyer is. I think that's really where people make a mistake, is not consider, they think their own taste is what everybody wants, which I don't know if you're a designer or really perhaps, but oftentimes that's not the case. You really have to consider who's buying this house. What do they want? What are they interested in? Do they care that you have the most beautiful backsplash tile in the world here in this price point, in this house? No, right. They want to make sure that they're not going to have to do a roof in 3 years because they're not going to have the money to do the roof. Who are they? Do they have the budget for this or that? What are they going to be concerned about? So focusing on who your demographic is and what design choices they want to see is always going to be really helpful.
Okay.
I'm curious, do you have a system with your flips? Do you do the same materials across, or are you thinking with each flip an entire new design scheme?
So I'm not currently flipping anymore. I've moved into buying and holding myself over the last couple of years. But when I was flipping, I would do something different with each house because I actually really like the design element. And I also know that Portlanders are not cookie cutter people. Portlanders are not interested in the flipper gray houses.
Yeah.
I sell them. I see them, and when I sell the flipper gray houses, I'm encouraging them to stage with a really great stager with colorful furniture who's bringing in funky pieces. Portlanders don't want to be boxed into a category. So I think people make a mistake, especially folks in other markets who come into Portland with their formula.
Yeah.
And they say, I always use the same flooring and the same paint color and whatever, regardless of the house. That's an issue. If you can preserve a beautiful mid-century house and upgrade it in the kitchen a little bit, but nod to the mid-century roots of the house, it's always going to sell for a premium.
You mean you don't want to take the nice exposed beam ceiling and paint it white?
And I've seen plenty of people do that. They assume that that's what people want, because that's what their formula says, or that's what the course they took says. But especially depending upon the neighborhood in Portland, there are going to be different finishes that people are expecting.
Keep the integrity of the home.
Yeah, they want quirk. They want charm.
That strategy applies not just to flips, and they go to your buy and holds as well?
Yeah, totally. Buy and holds, if I can preserve something, then I'm going to do that, which I think has worked out pretty well. I don't go as nice with the buy and holds. I try to think about durability with a rental property and what's going to last over time. But yeah, even with my traditional business, though, when I'm encouraging sellers to get their house ready for market, it's not a standard, this is what's going to work no matter what with every house. It may not, different houses require different things. That's the beauty of it for me. That's the fun of real estate, is that every day is different.
And when you do your buy and hold projects, are you just like saving up and putting 25% down, or are you trying to do like the private money and refinance out, or what have you done it all, or what's your preferred?
Yeah, I've kind of done it all. I started without having any money, and so we would do the Burr method, you know, just buying. I bought first rental property, it was actually on the MLS, but it was bankruptcy short sale. So bought with hard money, put in, I want to say like $20,000 worth of stuff, refinanced at the total note, and not including the renovation work.
It included the renovations.
Yeah, we financed with our hard money lender. We were able to finance in the renovation work as well.
Nice.
So the note showed the total that we were in, and we refinanced out of it at that price, and that was it. And we were able to do it again. So having no money in it was pretty phenomenal,
right?
And allowed us to buy something else pretty soon. Like we're not looking to buy things multiple times a year. It's usually about once a year. Try to buy something, but over the last couple of years, we've either 1031'd into other properties, or we've just done 25% down.
Okay. Okay.
Can you tell us about your entire portfolio right now, what that looks like?
Yeah, so it's not a giant portfolio, but I have five actual properties and 8 total doors. So I have 2 single families, 1 single family with an ADU, and then 2 duplexes.
Okay. So it's, and you've been in the business now for, when did you start? What year was that?
I got licensed in 2015, so almost 7 years.
So yeah, you're kind of pretty much on that one per year pace. That's great.
Yeah. So I think that my advice as far as where to buy or what to buy, when people are asking me that, I always tell them, like, I personally only buy things that at some point in my life I would live in. So college Kim, retired Kim, whatever.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Like, if I wouldn't want to live there at some point in my life, it's not for me. You know, I mean, you may be able to get better returns doing that, but that's why we've targeted single families by and large in like good locations, because I feel like you get people who appreciate the house a little bit more, or I find stuff that, you know, maybe is a bit further out. Like I have a duplex in Canby that has really great numbers and had great numbers off the bat, but it was in Canby. So I feel like a lot of Portland investors didn't consider it. But it's been great for us.
That makes sense. So, and you're all kind of in state.
Yeah, I know this market.
Yeah.
I trust myself.
Right.
So I feel comfortable here. You know, I know there are a lot of people that invest out of state, and we're definitely an equity growth market more than a cash flow market.
Right.
And I might change my opinion at some point in time, but right now I like the fact that I can drive by places and I know what's happening in each specific neighborhood because I have my finger on the pulse of it.
Right.
With the amount of business that I do. So I'm very attuned to what's happening here. And I feel like I have more of a crystal ball than the average person in this market, where I feel like I can see the trends coming. And I don't have the time to pay attention to San Diego,
right,
or San Antonio, or Nashville, or wherever, you know.
Wherever's hot.
Yeah.
So you have the one duplex in Canby. Are the rest in Portland?
So I have 1 duplex in Portland and 1 single family home with ADU in Portland.
Okay. And have you had any trouble with like the tenant, landlord tenant laws?
So one of them we are self-managing right now, and I haven't had any issues with it. It was rented when we bought it, so we just took over. The other one also rented when we bought it, but a fairly complicated situation. And I just put property management on it right away because I figured that was going to be the safest thing to do. I just didn't want the liability for myself.
So you could tell that with that one, there might be some stuff. So you're just like, I'm not.
Severely under market.
Yeah.
It was just severely under market. And I also know myself, and I've never been one to just jack up rent on people. Right. And I know it needs to be increased. It's just not sustainable to be where it is. So I didn't want to do it personally. So somebody else can.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah, I'd rather spend the money on that.
I ask because there's a lot of investors that are leaving Portland. They're scared and they're running away. I've seen a lot of multifamilies sitting in Portland, and people are always like, watch out for those move out costs with those tenants. They're gonna basically ruin your investment.
Yeah, I can say from the perspective of a listing agent who does a lot of business that I've had, I'm gonna say 15 listing appointments with investors in the last couple months for people who want to sell in the Portland area, which is obviously the opposite of what these landlord-tenant laws were supposed to do. It was supposed to create more protections, and the economics of it state that it's just going to increase rent in Portland in general. So I'm comfortable with it because I don't care. I'm never going to push people out or, you know, do anything sketchy. I know a lot of people just don't want the government telling them what to do, which I understand. But ultimately, if it's about an investment, I think Portland's a safe place to invest. And if you factor in these costs, rental prices are just going up at the moment. So it seems like a reasonable investment for somebody who's willing to take those risks.
Yeah, I mean, as we like to talk about, I mean, in my personal opinion, is when there is a little bit of challenge, it creates opportunity. So when we see people
for sure
leaving, that means that's a good opportunity for new investors to come in. And yeah, you might have to hire a property manager, or you might have to become familiar with some laws. But if you look around the country too, I mean, if you look in California, I mean, what is it in San Francisco? The rent?
Oh, rent control 2%.
Yeah, I mean,
I loved it. I lived there for 8 years. My rent went from $2,000 to $2,100 in 8 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I shouldn't have left.
I mean, it's just I feel like people have this. A lot of landlords here have this, like, they don't really see the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they don't. It's like it's not that bad compared to other places. And yeah, people are going to have issues, and they're going to have times where it's harder to get tenants out. But I mean, you have to remember, at the end of the day, it's someone's house, right? It's their life,
right?
So
exactly. And I mean, ultimately, I think that we human beings, generally speaking, are fairly terrible investors. Like, we're all constantly trying to time things, and we operate based on fear a lot of the time. And it's the opposite of what we should be doing. I mean, you know, you buy stocks when there's blood in the water.
Right.
That's the rule.
That's the rule when there's blood in the streets. Yeah.
So it's when you see everybody else running and people still want to live here and there are not very many rental properties available. Is that the time to sell your investment here? I don't think so.
Doesn't sound like it to
me. So.
Yeah, especially when the rent index is just up like crazy.
Yeah.
So what are your kind of like medium and long-term plans? I mean, have you reached the point in your business where it's just like fully sustainable? You're going to keep growing it? Are you going to keep trying to reinvest in real estate? What are your long-term plans?
That's a good question.
Going back to the restaurant world,
going
to reopen the bar.
No, thank you. So long-term plans. So really, I am just on the course to financial independence. I'm not there yet, but that's, hopefully within the next couple of years. And then it's just less stress. I actually really like what I'm doing. I don't have any problem selling real estate. I enjoy it. I like helping people. It feels useful. So I don't plan on going anywhere once I reach that place, but it just, it's a stress reduction tool. And then as far as the rental properties, I've never been somebody who felt like I needed a giant portfolio. It just seems like it's a lot of stress for not a lot of reward. And I also know what enough means.
Right.
And that's my advice to people, is figure out what enough means for you, because the people who don't know what enough means have to keep buying and investing and growing.
Right. There's always going to be someone with a slightly larger portfolio you got to compare yourself to.
Right. And then when, you can't take it with you when you die. So what are you doing with all of that? Like, I mean, sure, you might want to pass it on to your children or whatever, but you only have so much life left and you only have so many hours in the day. So if you haven't read Your Money or Your Life, I recommend it. It's a wonderful book, and that's kind of what my philosophy is. So I'm just working towards getting to that number and then just being useful to other human beings.
That's a great philosophy. I love that.
Thanks.
Yeah, and another thing we like to hear, we know that you're a mom, and how do you balance, having a career not just in being an agent, but being an investor and, remodeling stuff, and how do you balance that with raising a kid and you know?
Well, I mean, I couldn't do anything that I do without my husband, Matt. He's marriage is a business, which is a very unromantic way of talking about
it.
There's
a legal contract that you sign.
That's the historical perspective on marriage. And it's true. I married somebody who is a phenomenal partner in every respect. So he's the stay-at-home parent with our kid. He handles all of that stuff so that I can be off in the world selling real estate and not have to worry about being home for that. And I'm very lucky, because I know that's not the case with every agent. He's fully supportive. And as far as remodeling work or whatever, then that's really his skill set. So he's learned over time to get very good at that when I can convince him to do it. So he's really been managing our portfolio for us.
Okay. So he does the kind of the management stuff.
Yeah, he does the management stuff. We have professional management on a couple of them at this point, but he's been the primary contact for folks because he has that restaurant management touch and good with people and handy. So it's been great because I don't have to stay available for that, and I can just focus on my job, which is nice.
Yeah.
So he's the parent, and then of course I try to spend as much time with my kiddo as possible. So much of my business at this point in my career has been about making it very sustainable because everybody thinks real estate's really easy, and it's mostly just like going and seeing pretty houses and hanging out with your friends and
eating lunch, doing podcasts.
Yeah, martini lunches or whatever. And it's, you have a very different opinion once you actually get into it. And I think that what's the adage in real estate? Like, you can work any 80 hours a week that you want. So it really can be a very, there's just a lot of tethering to the job. Like, you can never really fully turn off. So I've spent the last couple of years seeking ways to minimize that tethering for myself. And I've joined forces with some other amazing agents I'm such a dork. I call us the Avengers of real estate. Like, we're just people who are really, really good at it, who all have sort of specialized in different pieces, and we work together. So I really am just listing focused at this point in time, and that means I'm not out every night and showing houses. Yeah. So it's got its own challenges, but I really have so much more free time now than I did before, which has been really great.
So do you have like office hours where people can't call you or can't reach you?
No, I try to set expectations with clients. Like, I really am not going to be working late at night or all the time if it's not necessary, but emergencies happen and people have different schedules, So if somebody needs to talk to me at 7:30 at night, I'm not going to send them to voicemail because that's not most people don't need anything at those hours. Like, when we had that freak snow day in April, I actually had 2 different properties having listing pictures taken that day. So I woke up to 6:30 a.m. phone calls like, oh my God, there's snow on the ground. What do we, so things happen, of course, and I have to be available for it. But for the most part, it's fairly 9 to 5 at this point.
Okay, no, that's great. I need to learn from you.
Yeah.
I got those 80 hours on lock.
Yeah,
sure.
There you go.
Not 100. So. Yeah. So. If people are looking to reach you or find you, how can they find you?
Well, you can Google me if you like, but I'm also at kim@livingroomre.com is the best way to email me. And you can go to the Living Room website, livingroomrealty.com, and find me on there and find some more information about me.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate your insight, and we look forward to following your career.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.